Hey everybody, and welcome to another painting video. Today I'm going to be working on this Blacksmith, and it's obviously not a gaming miniature, although I think it would be possible to use this guy as a giant. He'd look pretty cool as a giant, actually. But he's not. He's a 75mm miniature from Z1 Design. It's a part of their Hallows Townsfolk Kickstarter, which is going to be kicking off in about 2 or 3 hours, as far as I know, as I'm painting this. So by the time this video is up, the Kickstarter will be off and running. And I don't know, well, I don't know how well my lighting is working here. Let me see if I can adjust this somewhat. Well, he's so black. Anyway, they sent this to me so that I could paint it up. And I really appreciate that. And I am probably going to get in on the Kickstarter, which, by the way, is really not for these specifically. The Kickstarter is more about their 28/32mm Townsfolk miniature line, which are being cast in metal, if I'm not mistaken. This is actually a 3D printed resin piece, and the quality is astounding. Not just the sculpt, but the print quality. It's immaculate. I mean, it looks like a traditional sculpt, except that it has no casting imperfections. It actually comes with this base, the base topper, and the miniature itself, which fits in there quite nicely. But I've got a little putty in there to kind of hold it in place. I was thinking about utilizing it somewhat as something to hold while I paint it, but I think I might end up just hand holding it for the most part, which is why I have a glove on, because I'm a little concerned about oils from my hands getting on this. It's already been pre-primed. This has got a coat of primer on it, but I am going to start with a bit of white primer in a sort of zenithal highlighting fashion, and I'm doing this not so much to do the zenithal pre-shade thing that people enjoy doing, although if it ends up with any benefit from that in terms of brightening the paint, that's okay. That's good. See, again, I'm gonna hand hold this, but mostly what I want to see here is I just want to get a better look at the detail. I have a better sense of how to approach this when I do this way. This is a fairly recent thing I've started doing on a regular basis. I used to do this periodically when I just felt like I needed to, but in recent days I find myself doing it more and more. Again, just so I can better visualize the whole piece. So for example, now you can kind of see it better. All right. I think I'm going to keep this handy so that when I set it down, I can stand him up. All right, I'm going to start with his flesh tones. I'm going to use Warcolours Brown 1 as my base, and I'm going to apply it with my airbrush. Most times when I'm mixing up a small batch of paint for the airbrush, I do 5 drops of my reducer, which is Createx High Performance Reducer. and 2 to 3 drops of paint. And I think in this case I'm going to do 3 to make it just a little thicker. So it's not exactly 50-50. Your mileage may vary. All right, I'm going to let that dry, and then we'll come back. All right, so the next step is going to be using Warcolours Brown 4. Brown 4 is really just a semi-transparent burnt sienna. Or maybe a burnt umber. I can't remember which. By the way, Warcolours is still a fairly obscure brand of paint, which I really enjoy, but you may not have heard of before. So I'll include some links in the description that shows all of the paints that I used. This is mixed up really thin, so you're not going to see much right away. The whole idea of this step is to get his skin a little ruddier looking. I'm thinking that this is a guy that is pretty tan. But I'm trying to focus on shadow areas and the recesses of his muscles. His muscles. It's still early, so brain not fully engaged. I'll do the whole thing with this color, but I want to make sure that we've got a little bit more in those recesses than everywhere else. Also, I'm looking at my monitor and it feels like the white balance isn't quite right. According to my monitor, this is all a little more yellow than IRL. So I think the final photos that I share will be a better look at the what the thing actually looks like. By the way, I'm using my Iwata Custom Micron, which is an incredibly expensive airbrush that I don't necessarily recommend, but I love with my entire heart. The only reason I don't recommend it is because it is so damned expensive. But if you have the means, it is a wonderful tool. That is for certain. Alright, now I'm going to go back to the brown one, the original flesh color, and this time I'm going to do sort of more of a zenithal highlight here. using this color, and really I'm just want to focus on highlights and kind of tying those two colors together a little bit. I also got a little ding in the paint right here, which is really disconcerting, so I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to fix that just yet. So I was kind of hoping that this might help a bit. I think it's going to help a bit, but I'm going to have to address that at some point. I don't know if you can tell how I've got my airbrush kind of angled straight down the same way I'm holding the miniature to get that directional effect that I'm looking for. All right, I'm going to try with a very small brush to just touch this ding in the paint. Managed to get rid of that little ding in his forehead, but I also went in and focused just a little bit more attention on the highlights using the airbrush, because I had to do it really up close, out of the range of the camera. So just so you know, that's what happened. But right now I'm going to go to the brush, and I'm going to use a very thin mix of Warcolours Brown 4. This is again, I think, the burnt umber. And I just want to drop it into these creases and provide just a little bit more contrast, and especially where the flesh meets clothing. It's always a good idea to provide a little break between flesh and clothes. I am seeing where my initial zenithal highlight with the primers has actually paid off a little bit in some of the shadow areas. So we'll just call that a happy little accident. do some facial recesses. I really like going in around the eyes before I get started on the eyes. There's all kinds of little creases in here you can pay attention to and really bring out the extra detail on the face. I may want to come back again later and smooth out some of these shadows with the airbrush again, but we'll see. Alright, let me finish this up and we'll come back with the next step. So off camera, I did a little highlighting work. I had to work in close with the airbrush. I was using a little Warcolours Flesh 3 to do some of the lightest highlights, or at least the general highlights on the flesh tones. Really trying to bring out the brow, the highest points on the muscles, and the cheekbones, things like that. When I'm working that close with the airbrush, I gotta have it pretty much up against my chest, so there's not any easy way to show you that. But right now I'm going to use that same color to sort of punch a couple of details up a little bit more, and let's see if I can get this. Vein. That's not too bad. I was a little afraid it was just going to go over the top. I'm not entirely thrilled with the shadow I have on this one, but maybe with the highlight next to it, that'll improve it. I don't know. Oops. Yeah, one of the nice things about the Warcolours is until it fully dries out, you've got a lot of time to make corrections. Like if you want to remove paint, you just wet your brush and wipe it down, it'll come right off, which is not something you want it to do when it's dry, obviously, but once it's dry, it's usually fine. Alright, that's not too bad at all. I think I'm going to leave that there and we're going to move on to another part. Maybe I think the shirt. So let me get ready for that. Okay, I did something else off camera and I wonder if you can notice what it is. It is, of course, the eyes. That's another thing that I had to do close in, and I need to get this done. I have a lot of work to do, like paid work. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm doing this because I want to, and because I couldn't stop myself from doing it. And so I'm going to leave some things out because it's going to be easier to do off camera. For example, the eyes, which I'm reasonably happy with. I think they came out okay. And because I was continuing to work on the face, I thought, well, you know what, maybe I should do his beard. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to start out with, let me see, I think Warm Gray 2, which is really one of my favorite Warcolours paints. I do a lot with this color. It's almost like an ivory without as much as the as much yellow, as you might normally get in an ivory. And because it's more neutral, you can kind of take it in different directions. I mean, it's just a gray, but it's, I don't know, I like it. So I'm gonna base his beard. All right, with the base coating done, I'm going to add a little color into this, and I'm going to utilize Warcolours Ochre 5 in a very, very thin glaze. All right, let's let that dry. All right, to put some more shadows into this, I actually really like the color, but I'd like to add a little bit more definition to it. I'm going to use some Seraphim Sepia wash mixed with a little water. The sepia goes well with the ochre. And tends to be a good wash color for blonde type hair. I want to get a little highlight on the hair, so I'm going to use Warcolours Ochre 2, which is very bright. Oop, there we go. Very bright ochre color. And I'm thinning it, but I'm trying to find that right. I want it to be thin enough that it's not depositing too much pigment, but thick enough that it doesn't run into the recesses. That is good. Das ist gut. Oh, eyebrows. All right, there we go. Very good. Very, very good. All right. All right, we're going to work on the shirt and start with base coat of Warm Gray 3. I think I go through more warm grays, primarily 3, 2, and 1, than any other Warcolours paint, with 2 being the one that, oops, crap. Well, that didn't take long. Anyway, 2 being the one that I use the most, but because I use that so much, I also end up using 3 and 1 because they make for good shadow and highlight colors. Okay, with the base coat done, I'm going to go back to Warm Gray 2. As I said, I used it a lot. And I'm going to use the airbrush, so I've masked off the arms where I'm a little concerned where I might get some overspray. And I'm going to avoid working around the head. Normally when I'm going to do something like this, when deciding what to mask, I just think about in what direction I'll be spraying and where that overspray is likely to go. So I might end up, you know, something may end up falling over here. I don't think so. I just need to be super careful is all. And luckily, this airbrush provides me with a lot of control, so. And again, I'm going to focus on highlighting from the top down in the way that I've done the other sort of zenithal style highlighting. But I'm also going to be trying to focus on accentuating the musculature. Hey, look at that big word. All right, so now we've got our highlight, which is Warm Gray 1. I'm going in. Alrighty. Since I am back to using the brush, I'm just going to block in the rest of the colors, at least the clothing. And this is actually a function that I think is best left to the Citadel base colors. I really like them for just doing blocking in. So the apron and the pouches are XV88. I'm going to use Steel Legion Drab on the pants, I think, and Mournfang Brown for the belt and the gloves, and perhaps even the boots, but I haven't quite decided yet on the boots. And I may wait until later to make that decision. So I'm going to just do all that off camera because it's just boring. I'm just painting basic colors on the Mini, and there's nothing to really explain except for the colors that I'm using, which are not Warcolours in this case. Some other things that I'm going to need to do aside from that, and I may do it back on camera, but I had noticed while I was painting the shirt with the airbrush, it's got a couple of laces here that need to be brought out. I might put a little extra highlight around the edges of where the shirt opens there. And at some point, well, this is all going to get washes and such, so I'll worry about that when I get to that. Yeah, so blocking in, do that, come back. How about that? Okay, good. Here, closer look. There we are. All right, be back. All right, I've got all the, oh, I did do the pants. Well, I got all the leather. I've got all the leather blocked in, and the reason I haven't done the pants is because I kind of changed my mind in the direction I wanted to go with the pants. I'm going to do something that's a little bit more denim-y, and so it's going to be some blue grays, and that means I'm just going to get to that later. So for now, I'm going to start on the apron. Decided I want to work some red into this, so I've gone back to Warcolours Brown 4, which is burnt umber, and I'm going to apply it kind of thickly, almost like a wash. Because I really want it to kind of saturate the XV88 underneath. And really sort of, it's almost glazing and washing at the same time. Because really, because it's so transparent, it sort of glazes on its own. You know, you're getting it's providing a filter to change the color of the underlying XV88. But if you lay it down a little, oops, that's the wrong color. If you lay it down a little thicker, then it'll also hang in the recesses. Gotta be really careful. I don't want to get this all over the shirt. Oh, and while I was during the last break, I noticed that the Kickstarter had started and I backed it. So I'll be getting this guy and a bunch of others in 28mm. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and do the pouches. I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll see how I like it, and I might do another coat. We'll see. So I went ahead and did that same color over all of the leather. I knew I was going to go dark on the gloves, boots, and belt, and so this is really just the first wash. I'm going to do another wash on those. The XV88 didn't do exactly what I was hoping. The color is really a lot more transparent than I think I ever really assume when I get started working with it. So I'm just going to do another pass on it and really just do more of a glaze so I can bring the overall tone down, because I really wanted it to be more red and less ochre. And so I'm just going to evenly spread this out. I mean, if it pools a little bit, I'm okay with that. But my goal here is more filter, more reddishness. It was a little closer in the in this strap here. So I'm going to work on this and then come back. That is much better and much more like what I was hoping for the apron leather. So very good. Now the dark leather, essentially doing the same thing, but using brown 5 instead of brown 4, and this should really darken things up. And if I'm not mistaken, this is actually even more transparent than 4, so I'm not gonna, I'm really just washing this as like a thick wash. I'm not going to hold back like I did the first pass on the apron. I'm really glad I didn't base in the pants now, because it would have been a nightmare trying to keep paint off of them. Alright, now let that dry. With the leather about where I wanted it to be, I went ahead and blocked in the base coat for the pants, and that is Warcolours Blue Gray 5, which wasn't quite as dark or as blue as I kind of wanted it to be. So I'm going to take a little Drakenhof Nighthade. I'm going to mix it with a little water, and I'm going to see if I can both darken and bluein. Imbluin? Is that a word? This color. But I got to tell you, Drakenhof Nighthade, I really want it to work for me, and I try to use it all the time, but I'm rarely happy with it. So I'm not entirely sure why I'm experimenting with it again, but maybe I'll get lucky this time. It's also bringing out the seam in the cloth, and there's some threads that we're going to have to pick out later. I gotta say, right now I'm happy with this. Right now I'm happy. Like, this is kind of doing what I wanted it to do. Let's see if I remain happy with it after it dries. I might need a little bit more here. A little heavier to bring out those details. Oh, I missed this little sliver of pant leg. Coming through the belts. of rings. I don't know why, but it seems like no matter what I do with the Drakenhof Nighthade, that just seems to happen. And that's alright, because I can go back and fix that with another application of the base color, Blue Gray 5. But yeah, I think this is going to work. I think it's going to be fine. So let me... Alright, we'll let that dry. I'll come back. That actually came out really nice. I'm super pleased. I think I got the right ratio of thinning on that. Because like I said, normally the Drakenhof Nighthade, although I think I'm going to like it, I rarely do. So now I'm going to just start pulling out some of these highlight areas. I'm back to the Blue Gray 5, and I'm just getting the upper facings of these creases. This is thinned down quite a bit too. I don't necessarily want it to have a hard edge. And I'm being fairly easygoing with my application here, because this is really just sort of bringing back that color. And then I'm going to highlight again with Blue Gray 4. And I'll be a little bit more circumspect with that. There we go. Alright, so this is Blue Gray 4. It's a fair amount lighter. You can almost dry brush this. I don't mind dry brushing on cloth, especially worn cloth. Because it tends to give a fairly realistic appearance. You know what? I'm gonna do very light dry brush. Doing this very lightly. Oh, that is nice. It's another one of those things that that the Warcolours seems to be well suited for. So if you actually do use dry brushing as like a regular part of your painting style, Warcolours does it really well. Excellent, I like that a lot. Alright. Next up, before I forget, I'm going to do something with those stitches. I think I've got this Steel Legion Drab just sitting around. Maybe that'll look okay. Let's try it. That's not bad. I can hit it with a little highlight of warm gray too after to give it a little bit more interest. But I'm going to do this off camera because it's a pain in the butt. So I'll be back. Alright, I did some more blocking in. I've got warm gray 2 on the wrappings on his hammer, warm gray 3 on the handle. The buckles are all black now, as are the buttons. So I'm going to do the metal. To start with, I'm going to use metallic black silver from Warcolours, and I really like this color. It's a good starting point for metals. You can go in a lot of different directions with it. Kind of like the warm gray 2 that I like so much. It's just a good starting point. And so I'm going to go ahead and do his hammer. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it stone or metal, but it seemed to make more sense for a blacksmith to have a metal head on his hammer. I'm realizing now that with the blonde beard, he's almost like D&D's Thor. Like if Thor was a D&D character. Now the buckles. Alright, I'm going to hit the tiny buckles and just to make sure that I got all of the paint where I want it elsewise, and then I'll come back. I am going to actually dry brush something again, and twice in one miniature is a lot for me. But as you can see, I added some highlights to the buckles, and that's all done in Warcolours Pewter, metallic pewter. It's also a nice metallic. I actually, for the most part, really like their standard metallics. I don't like all of their color metallics, like red and blue and green, but their golds, coppers, steels related colors, silvers I should say, are all really nice. But I'm going to take a little bit of this pewter and I'm going to dry brush it onto that hammer really lightly. Ooh, that looks much brighter in the monitor than it does down here. Alright, very lightly. Starting with all the corners. Make sure to bring those out. Still feels like there's too much on there. What I like about dry brushing metallics is that it tends to kind of polish them. You get a look, a polished look that you just won't get by brushing the color on. So it's one of the few times where I actually prefer dry brushing to any other kind of application style. Alright, but it's a little brighter than I think I might like. But that's okay, I'm going to add some washes. I think I'm going to use that Drakenhof Nighthade wash that I used earlier to start with. Ooh, that's going to be a little bit too blue, but that's okay because we're going to add some brown. I don't hate this. This is alright. Take off some of the excess there. Don't really want it to pool, really want this to be more of a filter. Okay, need to let that dry. And then I think we'll hit it with some brown, maybe Agrax Earthshade. So, be right back. Okay, really like the blue on there. That turned out quite good. So, as far as my record with Drakenhof Nighthade goes, this thing seems to be pulling things more towards something I will continue to try to use as opposed to something I will avoid. So I'm going to do this next step with Mars Attacks there. Agrax Earthshade, and I'm just going to brush it into these recesses here to give it a shadow, to increase the appearance of it being a little bit on the dirty side. And I'm just going to keep going over it until I'm happy. I use the shades in this way quite a bit, actually. Kind of nice to, since they don't do a solid color right off the bat, if you brush them in, you get a really nice layered effect. Sort of blends all on its own. Oop. Let's see. Oh, there we go. I think that actually looks better on the monitor. So I'm going to do this, I think I'm going to finish this off camera because this is taking a little bit longer to dry. And I'm not sure how many times I'm going to hit it, but this is definitely the kind of thing you just keep going until you like it and then you call it done. And when I want things to dry faster, I'll use the heat gun or hair dryer. And I don't want to bother you with that noise, so do this off camera. I'll come back and then we'll work on the handle. So I'm definitely very happy with how the hammerhead came out. So now I'm going to work on the handle, and this is, again, that's the base color is Warm Gray 3, and I think to start with I'm just going to use Agrax Earthshade and brush it on. I'm not washing it on, I'm brushing it on, and I'm actually hoping to get some streaks, because brush marks in this case might imply wood grain rather nicely. The trick is to make sure it doesn't pool, which is really what the stuff wants to do. So that's not looking too bad there. work on the other side. I'm going to have other issues with drying here because it's a little bit thicker even than when I was doing the head. And this stuff, I don't know if you know this, if you watch a lot of my other videos, you might have seen this in the past, but the shades, if you put wet over dry and your wet is thick enough, it'll actually re-wet the underlying shade and pull it up, which is not a behavior that I want. Okay, I'm not going to go away entirely, but I am going to use my dryer, and so I'm going to cut away in editing and come right back. What I like about this, and I've used this technique and this color combination before, the warm gray and the Agrax Earthshade, and what I like about this is that it gives a nice aged wood appearance. Aged wood tends to be pretty gray. And Agrax Earthshade, while it is definitely brown, it is not a very saturated brown. And so if you put it over warm gray, you get a nice semi-realistic aged wood effect. And really, the less Agrax you can get away with, the more gray the wood is. This is actually darkening up a little more than I want, quicker than I expected, but I think it'll look fine. It's kind of hard to tell from this distance. This is really something I'd be doing closer up, but I do want you to be able to see some of the things I'm doing. Oh, so you can see right there where the Agrax Earthshade has picked up the underlying coat. I can fix that pretty easily though. Alright, I am going to dry this out again and take a close look at it and see if there's anything else that needs to be done. But in the meantime, that's where we are. Alright, be right back. It turned out that the I actually think the handle looks great. I didn't have to do any touch-up. When it dried out, it looked pretty much as I was hoping for it to look. So now I'm just going to add some Seraphim Sepia to the wraps on there. And this is again another one of my go-to color combinations. The Warm Gray 2 and Seraphim Sepia mixed for a nice aged, I don't know, linen or maybe light leather. It can be a lot of things, but I use this a lot. It's a good color combo. And again, that's why I use the Warm Gray 2 quite a bit, is because it just makes a good starting point for a lot of different things. Holy cow, we are getting close to done here. Okay, as I said, nearly there. I took him off the base. I painted the base. I didn't want to have to go into extensive detail on painting a base, but the colors used were Warm Gray 3, Warm Gray 2, Agrax Earthshade, Athonian Camo Shade, and then I even used a Vallejo Dark Brown Armor Wash. There it is. I love these. These are actually really good. in various places, and I may go back and touch it up a little bit later, but I do like where it is. So that's essentially done, and he is essentially done too, but I had one thing I wanted to do is the tips of his shoes, his boots, should have some wear to them. And hey, third dry brushing on one mini. And again, this is another area where dry brushing works really well, is I'm essentially just wearing away the toes, because, you know, that's where the wear is going to happen. And this guy works for a living. And dry brushing, again, is a perfectly good technique for this kind of weathering, and that is really what this is. This is weathering. Oh, there we go. And maybe a bit on the back. Nah, it's really about, you know, you're stomping forward with your giant boots, and they are clearly going to be scuffing up against stuff. But I think for now, it's not that I couldn't do more with this, but I do think I'm going to call it done. And I'm going to go, well, I'm going to do a little clear coat on him. And then I am going to mount him to the base. And then I'm going to go take some pictures, and then you'll see those pictures here in a second. So stay tuned.